Everybody, I'm Larry. I'm an e-commerce consultant, and I've been helping people with websites over the past 9 years. I created my first website when I was 11 years old. That story goes, we used to all hang out at the um, local community center, and everybody there would either just hop on the computers to access websites or read the books. And we decided we just hop on on the on the machines to play the arcade games. So in any case, one day I walked in and my friend Anna was looking at a website, and I didn't know this at the time, but we could make our own websites. And when I walked in there and she told me that, hey, check out my website, I was like, whoa, that's like something that I thought that only Microsoft or really large companies could do. So, after I was exposed to the fact that anybody can make their own websites as a kid, I rented out a book. I read along. It was one of those like how to make a website books. And then by the end of that summer, I made my first website. And fast forward to college, and I started using those skills to help the organizations that I was with to do things such as improve operations. I was involved with an organization that would recruit volunteers as well as create events. So we'd create a 5K event, and we need to collect money. And we decided that, as opposed to walking around and, like with our um, folders and just asking everybody to drop in their money for the events. Instead, what we would do, and this was kind of novel at the time, was we'd create a website, and on that website, people could hop on it, learn about the event, register for the event, and it would also collect their money. This was back in like 2009. So this was before like Eventbrite or anything like that. And that kind of introduced me to more of like the e-commerce aspects of the web. And ever since then, I've been working with medium-sized companies to help them improve their operations by helping them do something with their website, whether that's helping them migrate their website from one platform to another, or helping them add some kind of custom feature, or really just help them understand like how their websites impact their business. Um, so from that, like over the past 2 years, I've worked with about 50 organizations, each needing either large scale or smaller scale tasks. And from that, I've kind of created this case, and I've got a screen shared. And this is basically, like, let's say you are a company, you have a product out there, you have sales, and you've reached a point where you need to make some upgrades to your website. And you know like it's helped you so far, but as of right now, you know that you need more than what you have, and you don't know exactly who you need. So this is a case that I've created that will kind of like help you understand like the different types of things that you might want to look for. So this is a case of, let's say you are a fashion brand, you sell shoes, and now you want to upgrade your website, and you've come up with a list of things you need done. You know, you want your site redesigned, you want your site to be faster, you want to integrate more of the marketing things like Instagram, Facebook, retargeting for ads. You've noticed that sometimes your customers say, hey, when I come to your website, there's some links which aren't working. And, you'd rather that those customers are taken elsewhere instead. Um, you know, um, and also, like, since you're migrating your store, you're going to need to also migrate information about your customers, your products. Um, you might also need to integrate email marketing in a way that you haven't before. Like maybe you've heard apps like MailChimp, etc. You also might just want to set up a customer rewards program, and you also have a concept of an app that you want built to help improve the customer experience. So, this is like a list of things that a lot of customers tend to have when it comes to things that they want done on their website, but they don't know necessarily who they need to use for each one, or even if it's a developer, because sometimes it's not, but the customer doesn't necessarily know that. Sorry, I'm saying customer, the business owner doesn't necessarily know that. So next slide. So redesign the site. So you have a site, it's okay, it's worked, but you want it to be flashier. You want it to have a nicer experience for your customers. And your question is, how to accomplish that, and who do I need for it? Um, this one really comes down to what you're using. If you're in e-commerce, which is kind of like the focus of this case, if you're in e-commerce, then you might be using something like Shopify or WooCommerce, and those things are managed, and they also have app stores and stores for themes. And in that case, one thing you might want to do is look at the themes that the app stores have for like a Shopify or WooCommerce, and start from there, just to have a feel for what's out there. Because if you can find something that works out of the box that needs a couple tweaks here and there that work with your site, then that's a nice um, spot to start. And if you're using something like Shopify or WooCommerce, in that case, you might need a designer, but in this case, you might not. And so if you're using one of those platforms, that's the way to go. If you're not using anything like that, let's say you're self-hosted, then you might want to work more directly with both a developer and a designer as a team, where you might want to have the site designed first, and then have all those mock-ups ready, and then have those mock-ups sent over to a developer. And in this case, the developer you're looking for is somebody who's really awesome at front end, somebody who can work with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, somebody who can take these files that come to them and translate these images into code. Um, Next up, increase site speed. This is something that also tends to hop up as a requirement as well. And in this case, you have your website, and maybe it used to be fast in the past, but as you've made changes to it, as you've added other like apps onto it, it can start to get slow. And you've noticed that when your site is slow, your customers leave. They don't shop as often as they used to, or like as long as they used to. Like you have metrics that tell you that maybe your site speed is one reason why your customers aren't using a website as much. So in this scenario, what you need is a developer who is great with SEO. And that's important because site speed is really all about, I mean, why site speed also matters is because if a site is slow, then it also won't rank as high on search engines. So in this case, a developer who's able to understand SEO is what you're looking for, because they will understand topics such as what makes a site slow. Like it could be heavy assets, like heavy images. It could be apps that are installed on your website that you're not using, but they still take time to load, even though nobody interacts with them in any way. Um, so more of an SEO oriented developer is who you're looking for there. Next one that I hear a lot also is, and you've probably noticed this whenever you've gone to a website and then you've gone to social media and now you're noticing all these ads for this website. Like maybe you were looking at one of these things on the website and then now you're seeing ads for it everywhere. That happens because that website has integrated some kind of tracking that enables um, the social sites to know that you're the person that that ad needs to see. And technically, that happens because there's something called a pixel. It's just like a line of code um, that all these social sites give you. And this pixel, you install it on your site, and then it like automatically tracks everything. Um, Although this is something that you might think you need a coder for, if you are comfortable with code, this is something that you can install yourself. So this is actually one of those things that you don't always need a coder for. If you're using a platform such as Shopify or WooCommerce, there are also apps for this. So you can install one of those apps and it'll take care of this for you. But in this case, any kind of developer who is great with coding HTML, CSS, JavaScript, this is not anything that the coder would need to access like any servers for. And I don't want to make this complicated, but in any case, if you have a checklist of I need a coder to install this pixel on your website, the type of coder that you're looking for is somebody who can work with JavaScript and somebody who can edit your files um, so that these codes load on your site when the customer accesses them. Another one that comes up often, and this is one of those things that also tends to happen over time, is you have a site, it's been great, but you made a lot of changes to it, and now you have links that no longer go anywhere. So maybe you had something you used to sell, like an item in inventory, and you no longer offer that item. And now you have customers who maybe are coming to your website from another website that links to your website. Like, let's say you were featured on Vogue or some major outlet, and now that outlet featured this item you're no longer selling. Or maybe you're still selling it, but now it's located elsewhere on your site. So these types of things tend to also happen over time. Um, in this case, this is either something you do need a coder for. And sorry, like I have a stutter, so that's probably what's happening. This is something that you either need a coder for, or this is something that you can manage within the admin. Again, I've mentioned that there are a lot of e-commerce like hosted sites out there. I've mentioned Shopify and WooCommerce as some of those tend to have interfaces where you can just go in there and tell them, hey, when somebody comes to this link, make them go to this other link instead. So let's say you want your customers to, instead of reaching a 404 not found, you want them to go to this other item, which is close to it, or maybe even the same one on another link. That's something that you can usually manage on your admin. Um, and or if not, then in this case, you would likely need a developer who is great with more of the things on the server. So this is a developer who is a server-side coder, somebody with managing how users are redirected into your website when they access a link. That is usually somebody who you can find if you say, I'm looking for a coder who is great with the server. Let's see, next up, fix bugs. I should clarify that in this case, when I mean bugs, there is all kinds of bugs. Like you can have them all over your website. But usually the ones that get noticed are the ones that your customers are interacting with. Like, let's say there is supposed to be some icon and it's a very meaningful icon. Like maybe it's like a wish list you have installed on your website, and it's, you know, the customers know it's a wish list because it's a heart shape, and whenever they see that, they click it and a wish list opens up. um, but for some reason, on, you know, you've got it, it's working just fine on most of your website, but on one page that heart icon is now this weird box. And like maybe you've noticed this before, like why is this thing like now like a square? It's not really like an icon anymore. um, so like little things like that can really impact the experience of your website. And you know, it's something that you'd want to get fixed. And in that case, it's something that you need a coder who's great with HTML, CSS, sometimes JavaScript, but you know, usually it's just something like this, you know, the CSS is not loading the way it's supposed to on this page. So I need somebody who can fix the CSS. Or sometimes that, like in the case of this wish list, you know, like this heart icon, let's say you see the heart icon, but you click it and the pop-up's not opening anymore, right? So that's usually like a JavaScript issue, because usually it's some kind of script that is what's making this action happen when somebody clicks and something pops up. That's usually some kind of script that's making that happen. So you'd also need a JavaScript coder. And you know, oftentimes somebody who's great with JavaScript is also awesome with CS. Well, maybe not. Okay, you can find a coder who is also great with, you know, CSS and HTML as well. They're closely related. Like usually somebody would have all of those skills, but to be excellent at them, not everybody is excellent at them, but you can find the ones who are as well, as long as you know what to look for. So in that case, CSS, HTML, JavaScript. Migrating store information. So let's say as part of this case, this shop used to have their website hosted on something. Maybe they self-hosted it on WordPress in the past, and now they've migrated over to one of those managed e-commerce focused outlets. And I'm just going to stick to Shopify as my major example here. Um, in that kind of case, you're going to have to migrate a lot of things, because although all of your information about your customers and your products exist on your own site, when you move those things, when you're moving your store to a new location, um, your data is not already there. So you have to get your information there. You know, you definitely want to maintain your customer information, because it's really those customer relationships that help you with sales and everything like that. And of course, you need to migrate your products because your products are what you sell. And there's other things like that that you need to migrate. In this case, you probably do not need a developer for this one. You usually could do just fine with somebody who's great with Excel. Um, you know, a lot of these e-commerce platforms have a way for you to import information to them in bulk. So instead of you like going through their user interface and like clicking around and saying, add one product at a time, one product at a time, one customer at a time, one customer at a time, you can say, here's a spreadsheet of all my customers, here's a spreadsheet of all of my items that I'm selling, and you can import those. Somebody great with Excel can do that. They likely would not need to write any code to accomplish that. Um, the only exception might be if it's hard to export your information from your current setup. And, you know, let's say, you know, the question is, how do I create that spreadsheet? Um, sometimes you do need a coder, especially if your old setup was self-hosted and you were using your own CMS and everything. You would need to have a way to export that information, and the best way to export that information would be a coder, somebody great with the, the, the database that you're using. So, let's say you're using SQL in your old site, then somebody who can write SQL commands and can export all of your customer information from your SQL structure into a spreadsheet. Um, so in that case, that's who you're looking for in that case. But oftentimes you're great with also somebody who's just great with Excel if your old tool is able to export information for you. Integrating email marketing, that's another one that comes up too. There are sites like MailChimp, for example, which will help you manage your mailing lists and send out email marketing campaigns to them. And there's lots of them out there nowadays. I think I just listed a couple here that are kind of well known, but this is a fairly commonly used tool nowadays. And a lot of e-commerce companies do kind of have these pop-up forms on their stores. And I mean, I think everybody's getting tired of this where you navigate to a store and you see that the first thing you see, like 5 seconds in, welcome to our store, here's an email form, enter your email so you can receive a coupon on your next item. And when you enter your email, it adds the customer's email into a mailing list. That's usually accomplished by some line of code that those tools tell you to add to your site. So it's really similar to the retargeting, where I mentioned earlier, where if you want to have customers access your website and then they're on social media and they're advertised to, there's usually like some code that social sites tell you to install on your site. Same example here, like all these email marketing sites will have some kind of code that you can add onto your website, and it's going to make everything happen. And to add that code, you need a developer who is great, in this case, with just HTML, because they won't really be writing anything custom here. They just need to be able to go in there and put this code into your HTML. And then once that's finished, when the customers access your websites, then it'll automatically show the email pop up. Setting up a customer rewards program, that's another one that's really interesting. Like it's great to have customers who are really excited about you as a company. And, like, I mean, it's really interesting. Like when you ask yourself, like, what is a customer really? Like the definition of a customer is not somebody who just comes to you once, but it's somebody who comes again and again and again. It's kind of like their custom. So, if you shop anywhere regularly, like Target, Walmart, Amazon, you're an Amazon customer if you shop at Amazon. So in any case, a lot of companies want to create incentives for their customers to shop more often. And in order to accomplish that, they create some kind of reward system. Like, let's say if you shop here, if you make, if you buy something 5 times, you collect enough points, then you can get something on your next time you're here with us. That's usually accomplished through some kind of customer rewards account system. And this one could be easy or hard. Well, this one could be something you need a coder for or not, depending on your setup. So if you're using one of the hosted e-commerce sites, like Shopify or WooCommerce, they have app stores, and those app stores have these types of apps that you can just go and search for and install, and they're likely to have like tons of apps that are specifically for customer rewards. And in that case, it's really just all about finding the app you want to install, click install, literally that simple. And once the app is installed on your store, it might have some kind of setup process in there, but that setup is usually things like, how you want your rewards to work, like the mechanisms of how it works. For example, when the customer buys something 5 times, let them have a coupon. Like that's all, things that are kind of like unique to every store, but that's not anything that you need a coder for if you have an app that you can just install. But on the other hand, if you're using something self-hosted, um, you may not have an app store like that where you can navigate and just install an app. And in that case, you'll need a developer who is kind of full stack in this case, because you're going to have a need for somebody who can create that interface where it tracks how many times a customer has made a purchase. That kind of tracking happens on the front end and also on the server. So in this case, you're looking for a full stack developer, somebody who can develop both for the front end and the server, if you can't find an app for it. Do I have one more? Oh, develop a fun mobile app for customer engagement. So let's say you want to have an app on the iOS App Store or the Android App Store, and you want to do that because you have some cool way that your customers can engage with you, but it's not with your website. In this case, it's like on an app on their phone. Like maybe you want them to go to Target, and when they see your item in the store, they take like a selfie with it or something, like using your app. and um, and then like maybe it tracks them as a customer, and it tells you it like and then like maybe it also like sends them a coupon. But in any case, it's like a mobile app. So in that case, you're looking for an app developer, somebody who can develop an iOS app, an Android app, um, people who can work with languages such as Swift, Objective C, for example. But if you say, or Java, but if you just say I'm looking for an iOS developer, Android developer, those are the types of developers you'd need in that case. And this would integrate with your website, so you might also be looking for a full stack iOS or Android developer, or it could be a team where you have your server side developer creating what they call APIs that this app can interact with. So then in that case, the app developer can just work on the app and use the APIs that you have created for them. And I think that's a wrap. So it's interesting. Like everything that I've listed here are the types of things that a company might have um, to accomplish, like within a span of like a month or two. Like let's say we need all this done now, and you have this list, but you don't necessarily know, like, oh, I'm going to need somebody who's great with front end for one. I'm going to need somebody who's great with SEO for another one. I'm going to need somebody who's great with a server. I'm going to need a full stack developer. You probably heard all these things. So I kind of like created this to kind of have some kind of context and help you understand how different types of developers may interact with you and your company as you have certain needs. And next up, Q&A, if anybody has any questions. And by the way, how much time do we have left? Let me know that as well.
Hey, Larry, can you see me?
Um, Okay, I
But
can't see or hear.
oh, okay.
Is anybody able to hop on?
Hey, Larry.
Okay, so I can't see or hear the the video, but maybe if you drop it in the chat,
Okay.
or if you try, I think Kara, I could see. Okay, I can see you now.
You can see me?
Yeah, I can hear you too. Cool.
Oh, how did that work all of a sudden this time? Because I know on the other end, some people could see me and hear me, so I'm glad.
Life
Yeah.
is What's up?
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, I'm coming in live from Harvard Innovation Labs, and
Nice.
apparently, if you don't move, the lights come off. So
They got it environmentally friendlier. What is the word? Compliance, I guess, for saving electricity. But I'm so glad you can see and hear me. Great job on that. Thank you so much for joining us today. And earlier we had a glitch for anyone who joined us later and watching the recording later. We couldn't quite, like Larry could see only one of the three of us.
yeah,
And so, but Deja and I were on and we're like, hey, we could hear you. We could see ourselves, but he couldn't see us. So but yeah, no, thanks for presenting on that topic because a lot of people struggle with figuring out what type of developer to use and hire. A lot of people think, oh, you're a programmer, or oh, you do websites, and
oh
and
yeah.
it's more than that. It's more complicated than that. So I'm glad you covered all of those. Even just the jargon alone is really helpful.
Try to drop them in there here and there.
Yeah, and then for those of you who don't know, Larry actually used to be at Domi. As a student, you were pretty much like co-working there, right? That's how we met.
Yeah, yeah. You were one of the first ones I met, I think.
Yeah, and you were already like plugging away. You created apps, you got some publicity. I saw almost every time I saw you, you're like, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to be at on TED Talk." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And you already had like an article that went viral on Medium, right? I
Yeah,
think
yeah. It's
yeah,
crazy. Just
it's
like
crazy.
one thing leads to another. I think just follow your interests. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, you also have a studio art background. Like you double majored.
Hmm.
You, if I am correct, you did something totally unrelated to coding. You weren't even majoring in anything related to development, right?
Sort of. Actually, yeah. I mean, I studied biology as my as one of my degrees. And then I
Right.
studied studio art. So, got them both at the same time. And for the studio art, I was actually taking classes from the program in interdisciplinary computing, where I learned interdisciplinary web dev. So, I took some courses there that helped me understand like what is a server and how does it work. Hey, long time no see.
I'm so sorry. I did
No, it's
prep
cool.
them to stay out of camera.
I can relate. I remember when she was like this
A
big.
baby?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you were saying. Um, no,
Hmm.
yeah,
So,
and then
yeah,
so that's where you started fiddling with coding.
refiddling. So I made my first website when I was 11 years old, but
Right.
you like go from like one shiny object to the next. So like once I, was like, hey, I made a website, and I was like, ooh, a guitar, right? So like I just, I learned to play like electric guitar and moved on to other stuff. But like when I got to college, I started taking those classes and then kind of like was also like involved with orgs that needed those skills. So um, I was like, hey, this class here can teach me how to um, code for the server. We need to code for the server in order to create this event for our fundraiser. So I was just like, I'll take this class to learn that for that. But it also counted as part of my like art degree as well.
So would you say, I mean, I feel like you went like the unconventional route for majoring, but you definitely got practical education to help you get you to where you are now. Would you say that like were you pre-med at first and then you changed your mind kind of thing? Because it's kind of come full circle. You had
Yeah,
biology in your background and then you became a developer and then now you're at Harvard for medical related, like it's a
yeah,
medical related reason, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's all related. So, I studied studio art and bio because when I was a freshman, I wanted to become a medical illustrator. And
Oh,
you pretty
wow.
much need to be somebody who's great with bio and who's also great with creating visuals, to help. Usually it's like within the context of helping researchers kind of like explain their work to other people, or helping to train the next doctors, the next scientists, by creating really great visuals that help them understand these complex systems of the body. So yeah, I mean, I had to take a lot of interesting classes. Like I took um, a class where I dissected cats, so that was fun. Um, I got to learn all about. Yeah, I've cut up a lot of cats in my day.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
I know all the ways to skin a cat, and there's more
Poor
than that.
Kara loves cats. I think she's mortified, but
They were already dead.
they were already dead. Yeah.
In like classes that would like have us look at cells under a microscope. So like that sciencey stuff
Mhm.
um, was to help me understand, like the inner workings of the body. Um, like it's also like really cool how things are related. Like once you understand how one system works, which I'm not an expert, I'm not going to say I understand how like we work. Um, but like once you understand like a little thing like how cells work, you can get like ideas for how to create things and how those things might work. And you know,
It's
um,
like similar to I feel like program is like if this happens and that happens and I guess science in your mind has been kind of trained that way. But there's
yeah,
two questions.
yeah,
Somebody's saying backstage that there's actually two questions popping up right now. So if they can pull it up, then we can kind of see it together. Other great question, Zeke.
favorite programming
um,
language. Ooh, oh man, JavaScript.
so
Why?
why?
Why? It's a pain to learn first, but what's super cool about it, like JavaScript is one of those things that you can use everywhere. Like you can really like use JavaScript to code for the back end. You can use it to code for the front end with tools. And I know like some people are like, ew, why would you do this? But there's like these tools like Electron, for example, which let you use JavaScript to create desktop apps, mobile apps. Like you can use like one language to do a lot of things. So that's why I like JavaScript for that. And as of date, it's pretty much the only scripting language you can use on the web for the front end. And I do a lot of stuff there.
Cool. And I know there's a second one. Can you talk about how to make sure your site works on different platforms in Mac, Chrome? That's a great question too.
Yeah. So the best way to do that is to test. So like as you are creating the website, open it up on a Mac. Um, Open it up on Windows if you happen to have one. I'm not over here like assuming everybody has like all these devices because sometimes it's really just I only have this Windows machine or I only have this Mac, and most people just have Windows. But in any case, like a really great way to um, at least like make sure that it's not going horribly wrong is to install all the browsers on your machine. So install Chrome, install Firefox, uh, install Safari. I mean, even if you're on Windows, install Safari. um, Install them and open your website and see if it's working on all of those different browsers. as you'd expect. Um, because those browsers each use different engines under the hood, even though um, they look similar to most users, there's a lot of things that are different about them under the hood. And just by testing what you're making um, on all of them is a great way to make sure that it's going to work. There are also websites that you can use that would basically like open up your website on every type of web browser which exists, including like past versions. Like let's say you're on Chrome. I don't know which version on Chrome we're at. Probably like 40 something, but it could even like be like, here's how yours looks on Chrome 40. But as it happens, a lot of people still use the older version. So here's how your website looks on the older one, which you don't have installed. But you still need to make sure that if most of your users are on that one, then it works on that. So I think one website is browsertesting.com or .org. I could be off about that one.
There's probably variations of that, but yeah, that's really helpful. At least you can point them in the direction that there's got to be websites that do it. But yeah, no, that's really helpful. So I know we're coming to close to the end here. I do have a few questions before we hop off, and if there's nothing else popping up on YouTube or Facebook, I was wondering. So congratulations, by the way, you received the Dean Scholarship Award, right, at Harvard Medical School.
Yes.
That's awesome. I feel like
Thanks.
you're always up to something. You're always accomplishing something. So
Thanks.
where do you see yourself, 5-10 years? Will you have developed an app that solves anything related to the medical field, or is it a service that you're trying to do in the future that needs to help
Yeah.
major problems that, in the
Happy
health
to talk
field?
about that. Yep. So like this totally all comes full circle. And so like what I'm doing right now is very closely related to this talk. Um, so like most people don't know this, but the conditions of our environments have a direct impact on our health outcomes. Um, for example, like if you're born in one zip code versus another zip code, you're more likely to live 40 years longer just because of the zip code you're born in. These types of things, they're called social determinants of health, and they're factors of your environment that have nothing to do with you personally. Like let's say your biology, for example, like if you have cancer, that impacts your health outcomes. But that's a condition about you, not about your environment. So, as it happens nowadays, we use the web so much that it is a part of our environment. And we use it to go to school. Like we need it nowadays to learn. We need it nowadays to work. We tend to also use it for worship. We tend to also use it just to talk to one another, to connect with each other. And as it turns out, like the conditions of those types of environments, like the environments where we work, environments where we learn, um, those also impact our health outcomes, right? It's just a fact. So one thing that's really interesting about the web as of today is a big chunk of it is not accessible to people who have impairments, certain kinds of impairments. It's very much accessible to me. I do have a stutter. Mine's very mild, but there are certain types of impairments which do get in the way. Well, no, I'm rephrasing that. There are certain types of impairments which we do not build the web for in order to be usable. So, for example, if you're hearing impaired, um, if you are blind, colorblind, all types of impairments with your eyesight, if you have limited motor function, like if you can't type, um, with with all of your fingers, for example, all those things make it very. All those things are things that the web currently isn't usually built to handle. So what ends up happening is you've got about 50 million people who can't use the web in the ways that we do. And in 2019, the first ever like survey was done, and they discovered that 60% of the top 100 websites were not accessible to anybody who needs to use a screen reader.
Hmm.
60%. We're talking about websites like the top 100 websites. So these are like literally the places where we work, the places where we learn, the places where we connect with each other, the places where we go to the bank, get airplane
Big
tickets.
brands,
Yeah,
right? Like
all
big
those things that
companies.
are like yep. So like in any case, like um the question is like how do we address that? Like how do we get that down to zero? Because if you can't use the web, you're kind of like limited, and it does impact your quality of life, and it does impact your health outcomes. So I'm still figuring out like what that looks like in 10 years, but the question is how do we get that number down to zero? Last year they did the second run of the survey, and it was at around 40%. But that's where it's hovering around, and it needs to be zero.
So would you say the focus is going to be around accessibility? Because it seems like that's growing. It's there's a huge demand there. Um, I'm noticing that industry itself too, like, is trying to be, and even Google's testing things out, with their stuff being more accessible.
Yeah.
There's a lot of major need for improvement on that in that area, right?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yep, it'll be somewhere in that field. And with that being said, I think there's a lot of room in there as well for people who are looking to get to enter tech. A lot of the major tech companies are hiring for developers who are well versed in the web content accessibility guidelines,
Hmm.
WCAG,
Yeah.
they're called. Um, and like these are companies like Apple, Amazon, like companies that pay a great salary, who are trying to lead on this, and there currently aren't enough people who have those skills.
Yeah.
So just tossing this out there for anybody who wants to hop into tech and really cares about making the world more accessible. This is one way to really like accomplish both.
Are you, one last question, and then we can conclude however you want to finish. Um, would you say, like, how does that tie in? Do you think Web3 is going to make it easier?
No,
And
not. So, like, what's crazy is this is really a systemic issue. Um, like, we have all of the technology to make the current web fully accessible. Like, this is 20-year, it's like the same people who created HTML, like the W3C. Um, is the W3C is the international organization who creates the standards for the web. So um, they created these web content accessibility guidelines 20 years ago. Like it's that old. This is really not anything new. It's updated every once in a while, but this is a problem that could have been solved 20 years ago. But as I'm saying, it wasn't even until 2019 that somebody even like did the first survey to see how the top 100 websites fare. So Um, and like in
It,
that case, oh, sorry.
no, no, just to follow up with that, like, is that one of the reasons why you also got into media and writing? Like, I feel like
Yeah.
you want to kind of
Mhm.
continue to spread the word and get published on, on those topics.
Yeah. Yeah. So since it's a systemic issue, you really need to have ways to address it from that systemic standpoint. So this is about not just um, like like a lot of people tend to think like when you see as an issue and it's systemic, you want to go, hey, you one guy, this is your fault, right? But really, like systemic issues require systemic solutions. Um, in my case, it's all about how do we get this concept, this um, this topic into the discussions that people are having when they're deciding what to build, right? So whenever somebody's like, I want to make a new website, they have all these checklists. I want it to be responsive for mobile devices. I want it to be fast. I want it to be, you know, nice to use. A checklist should be, I want it to be accessible. How do you make that happen? It is through um, well, there are many ways to do it, but the way that we are working on in what I'm studying is how to really address systemic issues through changing narratives.
Yeah.
So that's through mass media and basically like getting these into our conversations. And there are evidence-based methods which I'm learning to help accomplish that.
It's all connecting now, Larry. Now I'm understanding why you're doing all the different things you're doing. And Malcolm brings up a good point. I know I see it backstage that he said, doesn't that need to be part of IT education? So,
Yes. Oh, yeah.
yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It does need to be a part of IT education. And with that being said, I was over here because I can cross register at a couple schools in Boston. So I was like, I wonder like which of these schools here have a course on, this topic. Like, so I searched the course catalogs of MIT, Tufts, um, Wellesley. Even though I'm a male, I can't attend Wesley. I can't attend that school because it's all girls, and Harvard as well. I looked at all the course catalogs. I could not find a single course that covers this, right? And
It
you're
sounds
thinking,
like that's something you need to do.
yeah. Well, with that being said, there is actually no. There is one course at Harvard. There is one course at Harvard, but it's crazy, right? It's not in our education, and it needs to be. That's one of the ways to address it because, right, if you look at all these companies that are in the top 100, the Alexa 100 websites, all of these companies have employees who got their degrees from colleges. Like a good chunk of the developers at Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, etc., did get a formal education in CS or engineering or similar. And you're like, wow, what's one way to really like change this whole thing? Well, let's get this into those curriculums. That's definitely one way to do it because those are the students who will be working for the companies and creating the things.
This is so fascinating. Well, I can't wait to see what you write and publish and start spreading awareness regarding this. I mean, or just bring out what's already been written, just bring it out to the public and make sure that everyone knows to start getting into this. Obviously, we're 20 years behind.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I also wanted to thank you for hopping on for Domi and being alumni, former coworker, and just staying in contact with us here. You accomplished so much, and we wish you all the best. Is there anything you'd love to say? One last parting word?
Nice to see you. Hope everybody in Domi's having a great time. Hope you enjoy the summer and um, go Knowles.
I know, right? Yes, go Knowles. And somebody says hi to you, Nikki. She got to watch in the end. I'm just giving her a shout out. We did see your comment. Thanks. She's saying thank you for your time, Larry. And again, we will just wait for backstage to end the broadcast. Larry, we'd love to have you back on in some shape or form and feature you when you have your latest new creation. And I wish you the best. I hope you don't get super cold in the winter
Yeah,
over there in Boston.
definitely gonna have to wear like lots of layers.
Have an awesome time there in the summer. I wish you the best. Thank you.